Hello and welcome to Creatively Montessori. Today I'm going to do our second in a series of literature pieces that I would read or have in my class, whether it be a Montessori environment, you're reading at home, a homeschooling situation, a daycare environment. I wanted to share some winter-based stories with you and what I liked about each one of them. These are all books that I either had in my library or that I sourced from thrift stores. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to get inexpensive books. You can always ask people who have children that maybe are a little bit older than yours and they've outgrown the picture books or the board books. You can, of course, buy them online. Amazon and Walmart.com are great places to do that. Really, at this point in time, the internet, you can buy almost anything, can't you? I do want to suggest that when you put books out, whatever you're working on with toddlers and infants, you usually do things thematically or seasonally. In my early childhood classroom, sometimes I would do things thematically, sometimes I would do things that related to, again, thematically, but maybe related to what we were studying. For example, we might be studying North America and I was studying the East Coast, so I would pick books that had to do with experiences, states, places, things like that that happen on the East Coast that may not happen in other places around the country. I do try my very best to get a balanced selection to the best of my ability between fiction and nonfiction. I think it's really easy to just read kind of fun stories with children, but I do think it's important to introduce them at a young age to some informational books that they will enjoy and learn a lot of information that they couldn't necessarily get from a completely fiction piece. So let me introduce you to the stories that I have, and hopefully you'll be able to add them to your collection. Or if you already have them, maybe you'll just have a better idea of what they're about. This one I actually don't have the dust cover. It's a hardcover of The Snowman by Raymond Briggs. This book has been around for a really long time, 1978, and it's actually a wordless picture book. This one I don't love to read aloud to my class because the pictures are rather small and you do have to kind of go consecutively in order, which if you're reading to more than just one or two children can be visually hard for them. But I absolutely love the story. And so there are a lot of beautiful drawings, and you get through and this little boy builds a snowman, the snowman comes to life, and they go on this wonderful adventure. And then he gets back home and he's not really sure it happened. And the next morning he goes out to the garden and he finds, there he is running to the garden. He's so excited to go. And he finds the snowman is partially melted. So that's that. But that's a wonderful story. The Snowman by Raymond Briggs. It's a great one to have in your library because once you've read it with the children, or you read the Snowman storybook I'll show you next, the children can replay this or tell the story themselves when they're in your reading area. That story doesn't go along with the Snowman storybook, which is by Raymond Briggs, and then also Snowman at Night, which has a similar idea that a child wonders what, after he builds a snowman, what do snowmen do at night? And so it's a kind of a good companion to the Snowman by Raymond Briggs. This is the Snowman storybook, which is great, I think, for toddlers as well as early childhood, 3 to 6 year old friends. This one, it's the same picture, same author, but this one, there are actually words to it, and it is definitely a simplified version in terms of the pictures. So it's the same idea. He makes this snowman, they go on this adventure together, but there aren't nearly as many pictures. So it's definitely easier, I think, to read to a group of children or even individually. He races past his parents, and when he goes outside, the snowman has seen better days. This is really, I especially like those books if you're in a place where it doesn't snow and children wouldn't have that experience of knowing that as the weather changes and it gets warm, that the snowman can melt and then freeze and different things that can happen. This is Snowman at Night. I do have this on my book a day for little learners. Actually, I have all of these as storybooks if you would like to share those with your kiddos at home. I know in most Montessori early childhood environments, And in most childcare environments, they don't have TVs, nor do I think they should, quite frankly. But I know at home sometimes you do want something that is an educational option for 5 minutes. And so I have Snowmen at Night that you can listen to. And I also have Snowmen, What Do Snowmen Do at Christmas? It's the same author, the same story. This book I really enjoy because the illustrations are great. And see, then there's his carrot. But it really does show what they do at night and how they go to the park and have a really good time. But look, in the morning when the child goes outside, look at the poor snowman has seen better days. So that one I enjoy as well. Olaf's Frozen Adventure. Disney books are not something I typically would include in my classroom because of the just, I know Snowman at Night is a complete fantasy. I know the Snowman storybook. I know those are complete fantasy. Nobody's going flying with the Snowman at night. There's just a balance, and we try not to emphasize commercialism, and so we try and discourage the children from wearing things that have to do with Disney World and things that light up. And again, personally, my kids had those things, and I wouldn't have any problem with my 2-year-old reading this now. It's just, this isn't all we do. We also do great pieces of literature and informational books. But this one, what I do really like about it, it's a very, very simple story. So I didn't love the story, but I do really enjoy the lights, how it lights up, and like, this is kind of scary. And then this is the people, the little villagers coming to save them. And at the end, it's this Christmas tree that lights up. So I do actually enjoy the light up part of that. Of the 4 things I've shown you so far, the Olaf's Frozen Adventure is the one that is the least literary, as you can imagine. And it's just not a good story at all, quite frankly. The other ones are much better stories. Polar Animals is one of the informational books I have. It's also a level 1 reader, which means that it is designed for a child to read independently when they are an early reader. Not the first book they would read, but an early reader. And so this one I liked because it has realistic pictures. And again, just a sentence or 2 on every page. So this is about the walrus. I have whiskers and tusks. I'm wrinkly and fat. And so it's just different things that I think they're wonderful pictures. I think they're easy for children to see and to understand. And so I particularly like books like this. This one happens to be about polar animals. Little Polar Bear and the Brave Little Hare by Hans de Beer is about this cute little polar bear who meets this hare who is a little bit of a scaredy cat. And they go on an adventure where initially the bear is trying to help the hare, and then it turns around where the bear is in a bind and the hare has to help him out. So it's a great book in terms of relationships and what do you do if somebody needs help and how can you help somebody else, and a little bit of social emotional, what do you do when you're afraid and you need to do something but you're afraid to do it. And so this book I liked for a few different reasons. We have 2 left in this grouping. Ruth Heller's How to Hide a Polar Bear and Other Mammals. And this one's about camouflage. So it's not all winter animals, but I did include it in this grouping because we were talking about, in our class about camouflage animals. So we talk about why the polar bear is white and then how it's hard to see him. And this is a really cool page because, again, once I read it, I put it where the children can have it in their book library, and they do really enjoy, very close up trying to find the polar bear, and are there other animals in there that they can find as well. And then it does other things like the snowshoe hare. And he was kind of hard to find initially. I had to take him in and it was like, oh, and so he's right there. But again, this is a great book. I actually met Ruth Heller years and years and years ago when I was in college, and she was kind of older. She was an older lady then. But she really wrote a lot of books. There are several about language. If you teach at the elementary level, about parts of speech that are just really phenomenal books and really help children understand parts of speech and what they're all about. And then the last one for this grouping is Brave Little Polar Bear. And this one, it's a fuzzy book. This for sure is a book I would read with the toddlers. And I don't typically have board books in with my 3 and 4-year-olds. I was always very sure to teach my young ones how to read a book and how to handle a book. but I know that sometimes, especially if you have a new student, or maybe you're gone in the afternoon and you have somebody else in the afternoon, sometimes board books are appropriate, but this is definitely would be great for infants and toddlers as well. And again, it's just a very sweet story, that, you know, he's a little bit scared and he doesn't want to go outside, and there's like, oh, something scary. And in the end, he helps him and he discovers that, oh, it's so beautiful, and why was he afraid? So a little bit like these two are similar in that they deal kind of with a child's fear and what they can do to overcome it, or what happens when they kind of give things a shot. So I hope you enjoyed my little preview of books that I would include if I were doing a winter theme. The other thing I didn't mention at the beginning of the video is you can also get many of these at your local library. I hope you enjoy this video and you're willing to give it a thumbs up. I would love for you to subscribe to our channel. I will post a new video probably about once a week. It's not always going to be about books. Oftentimes it will be about how to do lesson presentations and other helpful information. If you have any ideas or suggestions for me, I welcome you to leave them in the comment section, and I will be sure to respond to them. Thanks so much, and see you next time.